Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to Wrestler Weekly Presents. I'm your host, Scottie Richardson. It is Season 4 and Episode 2. Here we are in the Wrestler Weekly Man Cave Studios for Season 4. I've got my Family Bacon Wrestling Established 1972 shirt on. You can find yours at ProWrestlingTees.com/Wrestler Weekly. Thanks to Led Zeppelin and Black Dog for bringing me in for Season 4, Episode 2. And if you read Family Bacon Wrestling, you know whose song this is to the ring. That's right, the ravishing one, Reggie Richardson, now the Doctor. And yes, the Doctor makes house calls. So contact Dr. Reggie at 555-SICK. Okay, here we are, Mike Leotis. I'd like to give a shout out to Mike, the Grand Wizard of Wrestler Weekly. He has the knowledge, he has the IQ, he is the genius, if you will. And Mike is back with us, and the commentaries and the comments that he does and everything that he's got going on. And you'll see his hashtag ML on our tweets. That's right. If you are on Twitter, you are finding us at Wrestler Weekly. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook, as well as right here on YouTube. Make sure you are subscribed and make sure you are giving us the thumbs up. Hit the like button, hit the retweet button, and everything else that's out there in social media land. All right, enough of the commercials. What are we doing this week? That's nice, Mag. But this was a leftover from last week's. We didn't show. That's the famous Mag that I have. Soon to be on the wall. You know, one I missed last week is when Reggie was very young. He painted 2 or 3 photos that I have been able to go back and get autographed by the actual wrestlers that he painted or drew. One being, one famous one is the Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, both signed. And I'll take you a little walk through the man cave here at the end of the episode and show you that one if you don't remember it. But this one is Superstars of the 70s. This one is patterned after the famous wrestling album number 4. And I have been able to get some autographs on this. Ric Flair, Superstar Billy Graham, and Harley Race signed this one. It is a rare item because it's one of a kind. And, you look at who's on this. Nick Bockwinkel and Dusty have now passed. And this is kind of the photo that's the visual in my mind. Last week's episode was tough to get through. And we'll see how this one goes. I think we'll have a little bit just kind of a different vibe today. You know, in this episode and the next 3 weeks, I've decided to do a 4-week series on PWI, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the magazine that really, without Pro Wrestling Illustrated, there would be no Wrestler Weekly. I mean, 1979, I purchased my first magazine on the newsstand in the grocery store. And here we are, 1979, the first year I bought a magazine. And here's the very first PWI. The original, photo taken by Bill Apter, and we've had Bill on Wrestler Weekly. He was on Season 3, Episode 1, so you can go back and check that out. And in Season 2, the finale, Episode 15, we had senior writer Harry Burkett from PWI, and Stu Sachs, who has been just gracious to me through the years, and he's the one that really got Harry on our show, which was it was a fantastic show. We're going to have Harry back here in a week or two. But we have decided to do a 4-week series on Pro Wrestling Illustrated. This is my celebration and dedication to a magazine that has changed a lot of our lives. This was my, and I speak our because I'm talking about myself and my brother Reggie, as we grew up, late 70s, early 80s. As you know, mid 80s, we had the band. You can read about that in Family Bacon Wrestling. 1987, we come back to wrestling with a chance meeting of Ric Flair in a Rose's department store. You can read all about that in Family Bacon Wrestling. But we owe a lot, man, to PWI. These were our comic books. You know, and I've said this many times on the show, but it was these magazines. It was our reading the magazines, because when we were growing up, we didn't have cable. It was Saturday morning wrestling, local television, and you got Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. 1981, we moved to Florida. We got Championship Wrestling from Florida. Bob Caudle, Gordon Soley, you know my story. But if you're new to Wrestler Weekly, let me fill you in. Back in our time, in our day, it was we would read the magazines and we would act out territories that we didn't get to see, like Bob Backlund in the WWF, the Superstar Billy Graham, WWF, Bruno Sammartino. We didn't get to see television with Memphis and Jerry Lawler, or AWA with Nick Bockwinkel. So we had to live out those storylines and those scenarios from what we read from Craig Peters and Bill Apter and Stu Sachs and all the host of people that came before and after Gary Morgenstein. I mean, there are so many people that shaped and changed our lives. So we would take our Star Wars men, we would take our G.I. Joe, we would take whatever other figures, you know, Buck Rogers, whatever it was, Battlestar Galactica, and we would make those wrestlers, and we would act out. We would take the cushion of a couch, and that was our ring. That wasn't these fancy, you know, my son Miles is 8 years old. He's got all that stuff. He's got the fancy rings and with the springs and the figures and all that. We didn't have that growing up, man. We were poor. We were East 60th Street, Jacksonville, Florida. I mean, we grew up where I was taking the Pepsi pop bottles, as we called them, the glass bottles, back to the store and trying to get a little bit of exchange money for them. If you remember, I mean, that's where we were. And I mean, I say this all the time. If it wasn't for the Sunshiners, the church bringing groceries on Wednesday night, you know, we wouldn't have groceries. And so it was a tough upbringing, but it built the character that we were. And I can tell you, wrestling magazines were a part of that. And a lot of times, you know, newer fans, newer wrestlers, newer fans that are reading about the newer wrestlers, they don't understand kind of that old guard. And so it is Wrestler Weekly. We're trying to bring that back, and we're trying to build a community of like-minded people, like myself, like Reggie, like Mike, here at Wrestler Weekly, that we were able to do that and grow up that way. And I wouldn't change it for the world. Would not change it for the world. And I can tell you that when I now go back and I pick out an older mag, I mean, there is nothing better than to go back. It's almost like, again, going back to the comic books. If you like comic books, at Weekly Comic Book on Twitter, you can find some comic books that I'm putting out. But, you know, it was, when I go back and read today, it's like going back in time. These things stand the test of time. And now look, you've heard me say this before. All of this about, well, Scottie, that, you know, they were embellishing. You know, they weren't really interviewing. Hey, Scottie, they weren't really interviewing the wrestler. Guess what, pal? I don't care. I live in kayfabe land. And when I'm reading a comic book and Daredevil falls off a 3-story building and falls, crashes down on the hood of a car, do I really think he's dead and the whole run is over? No, I'm following along. He bounces up. He's a superhero. They keep running. They keep going. Stop, people, please. One of the things, I say this all the time. I'm going to say it right now. Shoot interviews, spoilers, all the back behind the scenes, who was eating at what restaurant with what baby face and heel. And guess what? I don't care. I'm in kayfabe land. I'm in the reading about my heroes. Harley Race, Bob Backlund, Superstar Billy Graham, Dusty Rhodes, Mil Mascaras, Nick Bockwinkel, Jerry the King Lawler. Let's get to the Mid-Atlantic. Greg Valentine, Ricky Steamboat, Jay Youngblood, Don Kernodle, Sergeant Slaughter, Wahoo McDaniel. These are the superheroes. And when I read it, I'm right back in time. I'm back at 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, sitting in front of that television, Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. I smell the bacon. My mom's cooking. It's a fog in the kitchen. You can't even see her, but you can smell the bacon. Here comes the gravy. Here comes the biscuits. Here comes the relatives are over, because guess what? It is time for wrestling. And we sit there every Saturday morning cheering and screaming and just going nuts, because that was our heroes in our childhood. And I have to thank my good buddies over at PWI with what they're doing. Without you guys, there would be no Wrestle Weekly. So kudos to you. And again, we'll have Harry on here in a week or two. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, so this one is October of '82. The pinup, by the way, obviously PWI is known for the pinup posters inside. Randy Savage is in this one. Jerry Lawler is in this one. And this is Ric Flair, Startling Confession, I Hate Being Champion, October of 1982. A great magazine, signed by Rick with the 10 pounds of gold. You know what I like? The covers with the belts. Those are my favorite. Now here's one with Ric Flair with a robe. This is a newer, we would call newer, even though it's now 11 years old. June of 2008, the special tribute to Ric Flair. This is a fantastic magazine. If you do not have this, I'm sure you could probably reach out to PWI for them to see if they have a back issue on it. But June of 2008, the special tribute to Ric Flair, his 25 greatest covers of all time. And that is the famous pink robe, signed 16 times, Ric Flair. All right, this one, I believe, was voted the #1 all-time Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine, and it has the Four Horsemen with J.J. Dillon, and I wrote about this in my book, the going through and getting all these autographs. But here is that magazine signed by all 5 men. I think this is the greatest faction of the Four Horsemen with Barry Windham. He was a great favorite of mine. And Barry Windham, heel Windham with the U.S. title, one of my favorites. I know this is Mike Leotis's. If this is not his favorite, it's definitely in the top 2. But this is Ric Flair, A Second Chance at Greatness. This is after beating Harley Race for the NWA World Title in Starrcade '83, and he's got the bandage, the suit, the belt, the autograph. It doesn't get much better than this one. An all-time great magazine and one of the best that PWI ever put out. The pinup in this one is Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Rocky Johnson is in that one. And let me see, I'm wondering, I might be wrong, but let's see. I want to say that I had Rocky Johnson autograph this, and look at here. We did. That was at an NWA Legends Fan Fest in Charlotte, way back, and when I met Rocky Johnson. So that's always a good one when you find an autograph inside. Now we're going to go from one suit to the next suit, and I tell you, these would look fantastic framed together. Get the glare out of there. Double suit, bandage, sunglasses, trophy in one mag hands, and the other a belt. This was the PWI Wrestler of the Decade, and I'm a big fan of the PWI Wrestlers of the Year. As you know, back in season 2, I did a whole episode on Wrestlers of the Year and getting those magazines. There's fold out of Dusty Rhodes in this one, but signed by Ric Flair as PWI Wrestler of the Decade. And don't forget, Ric Flair won Wrestler of the Year 3 times in a row in the 80s. So, as you know, AJ Styles tied that as he has just won 3 straight. Not sure he's going to get the 4th to break Ric Flair's record. I think that it's going to be someone else, and so that's going to be intriguing. But this is the last one of the night, and it is my favorite PWI Ric Flair magazine. I think this thing is rare. As you know, I've been working with my good buddy Bill Pavlik on a potential price guide magazine and book to come out. And I can tell you, we have this one rated extremely high because it is February of 1982. It's Ric Flair's first title. Remember, defeated Dusty Rhodes. He's got the crimson mask, the 10 pounds of gold strap, still in the ring, has not left the ring, hand on the rope. I'm giving you the description so you can get it mentally. Most of you know what it is, but this is just phenomenal. I know it took me a while to find one myself when I was really searching for it. And it's one of my all-time greats, it's all-time favorites, definitely up there. I can't say much more about it. It's just beautiful. It's fantastic. And as always, a Pro Wrestling Illustrated classic. And so I hope you have enjoyed. This is a 4-part dedication to Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine. And I hope that my good buddies at PWI enjoy it. But I hope that you, Wrestler Weekly friends, fans, and followers are enjoying it as well. Next week, we'll get another week of PWI and see who we spotlight. And it might be multiple wrestlers. It could be one. It could be some tag teams. You never know. So other things to look forward to in Wrestler Weekly land is articles coming out, books being written, other videos happening, podcasts in the works, so many more things happening. So stay tuned. Turn on your notifications to all things Wrestler Weekly. Again, if you want to find us, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at Wrestler Weekly. Here on YouTube, subscribe, Wrestler Weekly, and ProWrestlingTees.com for your t-shirts. Until next time, fans, so long for now.
Somebody say something about Tommy Wildfire Rich coming to you live in Myrtle Beach. The waves are gusting and the breezes are blowing. Lord have mercy. Wrestler Weekly. Y'all better check this stuff out.